Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb had maintained stranger things than alien battle armor, though he had to admit that Princess Cathara's ceremonial gear presented unique challenges that weren't covered in any standard military maintenance manual. The Velthara Empire's idea of diplomatic cooperation apparently included lending their royalty to the human war effort, complete with armor that cost more than most planetary defense budgets, and came with care instructions written in a language that looked like someone had sneezed geometric patterns onto parchment. "Sergeant Webb," Commander Harrison announced, entering the maintenance bay with the expression of a man delivering news that would make everyone's life more complicated. "You've been selected for special diplomatic assignment." Marcus looked up from the plasma rifle he'd been calibrating, already sensing that his day was about to take a sharp turn toward the surreal. "Special diplomatic assignment, sir." "Equipment maintenance for Her Royal Highness Princess Cathara of the Third Velthara House," Harrison replied, consulting his data pad with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list written in ancient hieroglyphs. "Congratulations. You're now responsible for keeping alien royalty's battle gear in pristine condition." The maintenance bay fell silent except for the constant hum of the ship's atmospheric recyclers and the distant sound of someone in engineering having what sounded like a philosophical argument with a malfunctioning gravity generator. Marcus processed this information while mentally calculating how many ways this assignment could go catastrophically wrong. "Sir, with respect, I specialize in human military equipment. I've never worked on Velthara technology." "Hence why you're perfect for the job," Harrison replied with the logic that made military bureaucracy such a uniquely creative form of torture. The princess specifically requested someone without preconceptions about proper protocol. Apparently, the last maintenance specialist spent so much time bowing and apologizing that he never actually fixed anything. Marcus set down his tools with the careful precision of someone, accepting that the universe had decided to make his career path significantly more interesting. "What exactly does this assignment involve?" "Routine maintenance, battle damage repair, and general upkeep of Her Highness's personal combat equipment," Harrison read from his pad. "You'll work directly with the princess to ensure optimal functionality of her gear during joint operations against Zarathi forces." "Directly with the princess," Marcus repeated, trying to imagine how conversations with 7-foot-tall alien royalty typically proceeded. "Any particular protocols I should be aware of?" "Don't call her Your Majesty, that's for the Empress. Your Highness is appropriate, though she apparently prefers Princess Cathara in professional settings. Don't make direct eye contact unless she initiates it. Don't touch her armor while she's wearing it. And for the love of all that's sacred, don't ask her about Velthara mating rituals." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That last one seems oddly specific, sir." "Specialist Rodriguez learned that the hard way," Harrison replied grimly. "He's still in medical recovery, though the doctors say his dignity might never fully heal." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself standing outside Diplomatic Suite 7, carrying a toolkit that felt woefully inadequate for maintaining alien technology, and wondering why he'd ever thought military life would be predictable. The door slid open before he could announce himself, revealing Princess Cathara in what appeared to be casual attire, if casual attire could include fabric that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light and jewelry that hummed softly with contained energy. She was exactly as tall as advertised, with the distinctive pointed ears that marked her as Velthara nobility and skin that currently displayed a cautious blue-green hue that Marcus suspected indicated wariness. Her eyes were large and dark, studying him with the intensity of someone cataloging potential threats. "Sergeant Webb," she said in accented but precise standard, her voice carrying the kind of authority that suggested she was accustomed to being obeyed without question. "You are here to maintain my armor." "Yes, Your Highness," Marcus replied, grateful that his voice remained steady. I understand your equipment sustained damage in yesterday's engagement. Princess Kithara gestured toward an alcove where her battle armor stood on a maintenance frame, and Marcus felt his professional instincts override his diplomatic nervousness. The armor was a masterpiece of alien engineering, combining ceremonial artistry with practical protection in ways that human technology hadn't yet achieved. It was also clearly showing the effects of recent combat. Impressive craftsmanship, Marcus said, approaching the armor with the careful attention he'd give to any valuable piece of equipment. These scorch marks suggest plasma weapon impacts, but the underlying structure looks intact. He was already pulling diagnostic tools from his kit, his mind shifting into the familiar rhythm of assessment and repair planning. Princess Kithara watched silently as he began examining the damage, her skin shifting through subtle color changes that Marcus interpreted as curiosity replacing caution. Most humans fear to approach Velthara armor, she observed after several minutes of watching him work. Marcus looked up from the energy distribution panel he'd been studying. It's just equipment, Your Highness. Very sophisticated equipment that deserves proper care, but still just tools designed to keep you safe and effective in combat. The princess's skin flickered to a shade Marcus hadn't seen before, something between surprised and thoughtful. Just equipment, she repeated, as if the concept required translation into a language she'd never learned. The maintenance bay had become Marcus's favorite workspace aboard the Meridian's edge, partly because it was one of the few places on the ship where he could spread out properly, and partly because Princess Kithara had developed the habit of observing his work with the focused attention of someone trying to solve a particularly complex puzzle. She would sit on a supply crate in the corner, her skin cycling through thoughtful amber patterns while he methodically restored her armor to combat readiness. The quantum matrix in the left gauntlet is showing some instability, Marcus announced, running a diagnostic scanner over the ornate metalwork. Nothing dangerous, but it might affect your weapon targeting accuracy during extended engagements. Princess Kithara leaned forward slightly, her curiosity evident in the way her skin brightened. How can you determine this from external examination? Marcus smiled, genuinely pleased by the question. Velthara technology uses harmonic resonance patterns that change when components are stressed. See this discoloration along the matrix housing. That's not battle damage. It's a sign that the quantum field generators are working harder than they should be to maintain stability. He demonstrated by running the scanner over several sections of the gauntlet, the device's readings translating into audible tones that created an almost musical pattern. Listen to the difference between this section and this one. The harmonics tell a story about what's happening inside the armor. You speak of my equipment as if it lives, Princess Kithara observed, her tone carrying what Marcus was learning to recognize as genuine interest rather than diplomatic politeness. In a way it does, Marcus replied, beginning the delicate process of recalibrating the quantum matrix. Good equipment develops personality quirks over time. Your armor has been shaped by how you use it, your fighting style, even your body's energy patterns. It's become uniquely yours in ways that go beyond simple ownership. The princess watched him work in comfortable silence for several minutes, the only sounds the soft hum of his tools and the distant background noise of ship operations. Marcus had grown to appreciate these quiet moments, finding them surprisingly restful after the controlled chaos of military life. Sergeant Webb, Princess Kithara said eventually, may I ask you something that is not related to armor maintenance? Marcus paused in his work, noting the formal way she'd phrased the question. Of course, Your Highness. Other humans aboard this vessel. They behave differently when they interact with me. They speak carefully, move precisely, avoid looking directly at me. You do not do these things. Marcus considered his response, while making minor adjustments to the gauntlet's targeting system. Diplomatic protocol can be intimidating, especially when people are worried about causing offense. Most of the crew probably wants to show proper respect, but isn't sure exactly how. And you are not concerned with proper respect? She asked, though her tone suggested curiosity rather than offense. I figure the best way to show respect is to do good work, Marcus replied simply. Your armor keeps you safe in combat, which means maintaining it properly is important. Everything else is just social complexity that doesn't help anyone accomplish their mission. Princess Cathara's skin shifted through several color patterns Marcus was beginning to associate with deep thought. Social complexity, she repeated. An interesting phrase. Marcus finished the calibration and moved on to examining the armor's shoulder plates, noting some microfractures that would need attention. Your Highness, can I ask you something? These stress patterns suggest you favor your left side during combat. Do you have an injury I should account for when making adjustments? The question seemed to surprise her. You can determine my fighting preferences from examining my armor. Equipment shows wear patterns that reflect how it's used, Marcus explained. The way these components have been stressed tells me about your tactical approach, your preferred weapons, even which types of opponents you've faced most often. It helps me prioritize repairs and modifications. No one has ever asked me about my combat preferences, Princess Cathara said quietly. Marcus looked up from his work, noting that her skin had shifted to deeper, more subdued tones. Really? But you're the one wearing the armor. Your comfort and effectiveness should be the primary considerations for any maintenance work. I am told what equipment I will use and how I will use it, she replied. The armor is a symbol of my house and my position. Personal preference is not typically considered relevant. Marcus set down his tools, giving her his full attention. That seems backwards. You're the one who has to fight in it. If the armor doesn't work well for your particular fighting style, it's not doing its job properly. The silence that followed stretched long enough for Marcus to worry. He'd said something diplomatically inappropriate. But Princess Cathara's expression suggested contemplation rather than offense. You truly see my armor as equipment designed to serve me, she said finally, rather than regalia I am privileged to wear. Why would it be anything else? Marcus asked, genuinely puzzled. The most beautiful armor in the galaxy is useless if it gets you killed, because it doesn't fit properly or interferes with your movement. Princess Cathara stood and moved closer to where Marcus was working, studying her armor with what seemed like new eyes. Show me these stress patterns you mentioned. I would like to understand what my equipment is telling you about my fighting methods. The aftermath of the Zarathi ambush at the Kepler station left Princess Cathara's armor looking like it had been used as target practice by an artillery unit with artistic pretensions. Marcus surveyed the damage while she sat quietly on her usual supply crate, her skin displaying muted gray tones that he'd learned indicated exhaustion mixed with frustration. Well, Marcus said, running his hands over the scorched chest plate, the good news is that your armor performed exactly as designed. The bad news is that it absorbed enough energy to power a small city for about 6 months. The Zarathi were better prepared than our intelligence suggested, Princess Cathara replied, her voice carrying the flat tone of someone who'd spent the last 4 hours in tactical debriefings. Their plasma weapons have been upgraded since our last engagement. Marcus nodded, already planning his repair approach. The blast patterns were more concentrated than usual, suggesting the enemy had developed new targeting systems specifically designed to overwhelm Velthara shielding technology. It was the kind of adaptation that made interstellar warfare particularly unpleasant for everyone involved. I'm going to need to completely rebuild the energy distribution matrix in the torso section, he said, beginning the careful process of removing the damaged components. This might take a while. I have nowhere else to be, Princess Cathara replied, settling more comfortably on her makeshift seat. They fell into their familiar routine, Marcus working with methodical precision while explaining his process, and the princess observing with the kind of focused attention that had become one of the unexpected pleasures of his assignment. The maintenance bay felt like an island of calm in the controlled chaos of military life, insulated from the constant background stress of being at war with alien species that had unpleasant ideas about human expansion into their territory. "This section here," Marcus said, indicating a particularly intricate piece of decorative scrollwork on the chest plate, "took a direct hit, but the underlying structure is intact. The artistry is remarkable. Whoever designed this managed to integrate functional energy channeling with ceremonial aesthetics." He began cleaning the scrollwork with careful attention to detail, treating each curve and flourish as if it mattered beyond simple ornamentation. Princess Kithara watched him work, her skin gradually shifting from gray to more complex patterns that Marcus had learned to associate with deep thought. "Sergeant Webb," she said quietly, "may I ask you something?" "Of course, Your Highness," Marcus replied, not looking up from his cleaning work. "Why do you treat me like I matter?" The question was so unexpected that Marcus paused mid-motion, his cleaning cloth still in his hand. He looked up to find Princess Kithara gestured toward her armor, toward the careful way he'd been cleaning the decorative elements. "You maintain my equipment with the same attention you give to functional components. You ask my opinions about repairs and modifications. You explain your work as if my understanding matters. You treat my comfort and preferences as important considerations." Marcus set down his cleaning supplies, giving her his full attention. "Your Highness, of course you matter. Why would you think otherwise?" "Because I am useful," she replied, her voice carrying a matter-of-fact tone that somehow made the words more heartbreaking. "I am valued for my tactical abilities, my bloodline, my position as a symbol of the alliance between our peoples. I am treated with respect because disrespecting me would have diplomatic consequences. But you clean the decorative elements of my armor as carefully as the functional ones. You ask about my preferences not because protocol requires it, but because you believe my answers have value." Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of their interactions over the past several weeks. "Princess Kithara, has anyone ever told you that you matter just because you're a person?" The question seemed to surprise her. "I am not certain I understand what you mean by just because I'm a person." Marcus resumed his cleaning work, partly because he needed time to find the right words, and partly because he'd noticed that serious conversation seemed easier when his hands were busy. "I mean that you have inherent worth that isn't dependent on your usefulness or your position, or your ability to contribute to military objectives. You matter because you exist, because you think and feel and have experiences that are unique to you." "That is not how leadership works," Princess Kithara said, though her tone suggested she was testing the idea rather than rejecting it. "Maybe not," Marcus agreed, "but it's how people work. At least it's how people should work." He held up the section of scrollwork he'd been cleaning, now restored to its original luster. "I clean this carefully not because it's functionally important, but because someone put time and skill into creating something beautiful, and that effort deserves respect. I ask your opinions about your armor because you're the one who has to wear it, and your comfort matters. I explain my work because I think you're intelligent enough to find it interesting." Princess Kithara stared at him for a long moment, her skin cycling through patterns Marcus had never seen before, complex combinations of colors that seemed to reflect internal conflict. "You make it sound simple," she said finally. "It is simple," Marcus replied, returning to his work. "Complicated things are usually complicated because people make them that way. Treating someone with basic human decency, or in your case, basic decent person decency, shouldn't require elaborate protocols or diplomatic considerations." The silence that followed was different from their usual comfortable quiet. It felt charged with possibility, as if something fundamental had shifted in the space between them. "Sergeant Webb," Princess Kithara said eventually, "when you finish repairing my armor, Would you show me how to clean the decorative elements properly? I would like to understand how to care for them myself." Marcus looked up from his work and smiled. "I'd be happy to, Your Highness, though I should warn you, once you start paying attention to the details, it's hard to stop." "I believe," she replied, her skin now displaying warm golden tones that suggested something like contentment. That might not be such a bad thing. 3 weeks after their conversation about mattering, the maintenance bay had evolved into something that resembled a collaborative workshop more than a simple repair facility. Princess Kethara had taken to arriving early for their sessions, often bringing technical manuals from Velthara archives that she'd translated into standard. Her genuine enthusiasm for understanding her equipment, creating an atmosphere of shared discovery that neither of them had expected. "The resonance frequency in the left pauldron is still slightly off," she observed, running a diagnostic scanner over the armor component with the careful attention Marcus had taught her. "But I believe I understand why now." Marcus looked up from the weapon mounting system he'd been modifying, pleased by the confidence in her voice. "Oh, the quantum matrix was manufactured on Velthara Prime, where the gravitational field is slightly stronger than ship standard," Princess Kethara explained, her skin displaying the bright, focused patterns Marcus had learned to associate with intellectual engagement. "The calibration assumes that baseline, so it needs constant micro-adjustments to compensate for different gravitational environments." "Exactly right," Marcus confirmed, setting down his tools to give her his full attention. "Most maintenance technicians just recalibrate to ship standard and call it done, but that creates long-term stability issues." They worked in comfortable synchronization, Marcus handling the more complex technical modifications, while Princess Kethara managed the detail work and diagnostic monitoring. Their collaboration had developed its own rhythm over the weeks, punctuated by conversations that ranged from technical discussions about quantum field theory to more personal exchanges about leadership, responsibility, and the unexpected challenges of being valued primarily for what you could contribute rather than who you were. "Sergeant Webb," Princess Kethara said, pausing in her work, "I have been meaning to tell you something." Marcus looked up from the energy coupling he'd been installing, noting the serious tone in her voice. "What's that, Your Highness?" "In yesterday's tactical briefing, Commander Harrison asked for my assessment of human combat doctrine," she said, her skin displaying thoughtful amber patterns. "I found myself defending your species' approach to equipment maintenance and crew care." "Defending how so?" Princess Kethara set down her diagnostic scanner, choosing her words carefully. "The Velthara commanders believe humans are inefficient because you prioritize individual welfare over operational objectives. I explained that this perspective misunderstands the relationship between individual care and overall effectiveness." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued by where this was heading. "That sounds like the beginning of an interesting argument." "I told them that a human maintenance specialist had taught me more about optimal armor performance in 3 weeks than I had learned in 10 years of traditional Velthara training," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "Because the human approach considers the person using the equipment as part of the system, rather than merely an operator of the system." The implications of what she was saying hit Marcus with unexpected force. "Princess Kethara, that could be seen as criticism of Velthara military doctrine." "Yes," she agreed simply, "it could be." Marcus set down his tools completely, recognizing that they'd moved beyond casual conversation into something more significant. "Are you comfortable with that?" Princess Kethara considered the question while absently running her fingers along the restored scrollwork on her armor's chest plate. The same decorative elements Marcus had been cleaning when she'd first asked him why she mattered. "I have spent my entire life being told that my value comes from my ability to fulfill my role perfectly," she said finally. "My worth was measured by how well I could serve as a symbol, a leader, a strategic asset. But you have shown me that There is a difference between being valuable and being valued. Marcus felt something profound in those words, a recognition of transformation that went beyond their professional relationship. What's the difference? Being valuable means others have use for you, Princess Cathara replied, her skin now displaying complex patterns that seemed to reflect deep satisfaction. Being valued means others recognize that you have inherent worth independent of your utility. You taught me this difference not through words, but through small actions repeated consistently over time. She gestured toward her armor, now functioning better than it had since its original manufacture thanks to their collaborative improvements. When you clean the decorative elements as carefully as the functional ones, you demonstrate that beauty has value even when it serves no tactical purpose. When you ask my preferences about modifications, you show that my comfort matters even when it might be militarily irrelevant. When you explain your work, you treat my understanding as inherently worthwhile rather than merely useful for future maintenance requirements. Marcus found himself thinking about the weeks they'd spent working together, seeing their interactions through this new perspective. I never thought about it that way. Neither did I until recently, Princess Cathara admitted. But now I find myself treating others differently. I ask my subordinates for their opinions rather than simply issuing orders. I consider the comfort and preferences of my troops when planning operations. I explain my tactical decisions so they understand not just what we are doing, but why. How is that working out? Princess Cathara's skin brightened to warm golden tones that Marcus had learned indicated genuine happiness. My unit's combat effectiveness has improved significantly. When people feel valued rather than merely useful, they contribute more than just their assigned capabilities. Marcus resumed his work on the energy coupling, processing this unexpected outcome of their equipment maintenance sessions. So what you're saying is that treating people like they matter actually works better than treating them like resources. Revolutionary concept, is it not? Princess Cathara replied with what Marcus was learning to recognize as Velthara humor. Perhaps we should write a tactical manual, how to improve military performance through basic decency. Chapter 1. Clean the decorative elements too, Marcus suggested, grinning as he tightened the final connection on her armor's upgraded weapon system. Princess Cathara stood and moved to the armor mounting frame, running her hands over the restored and improved equipment with obvious satisfaction. Sergeant Webb, I believe our maintenance arrangement has taught me something more valuable than optimal armor performance. What's that, Your Highness? That the most important repairs, she said, her skin displaying patterns of deep contentment, are often the ones that cannot be measured by diagnostic equipment. Marcus stepped back to admire their completed work, armor that now functioned as a seamless extension of its wearer, customized to Princess Cathara's specific needs and preferences, while maintaining all of its ceremonial significance. But more than that, it represented something neither of them had expected when this assignment began. Proof that treating someone like they matter can fundamentally change